Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Unsolved Mysteries Rewatch podcast with your host, Bryan McKenna. It's me, Bryan McKenna. Happy to be here. We are live in the Robert Stack studio, aka my second bedroom, recording the next episode here, Volume 4, Episode 2, Body in the Basement. This is a absolutely baffling case in every which way possible. My hair is so curly. If anyone looking at this on video, you can see how curly my hair is. Anyway, I don't want to look at myself anymore. That's annoying. Absolutely baffling case. This one. I just rewatched it. This is the second time I've watched this episode, and it gets more and more confusing, kind of as I watch it. There are just so many kind of unanswered questions. I'll give you guys a little bit of the details, and then we'll go from there. This is a case about a woman by the name of Amanda Antoni, 31 years old, from Castle Ridge, Northeast Calgary, Alberta, Canada. My wife is actually, I've been to Calgary. She's not from this particular area, but she does have family that does live there, and she's from, Alberta. So this one kind of was interesting. I actually made my wife watch it. She doesn't watch every episode as she feels a little uneasy because, every case is unsolved. So I actually made her watch it strictly because, it's kind of her area. So I wanted to see what her take was on it. Did anyone else really enjoy the police officer in this one? I thought he was a really good guy. Just overall, I don't know. I just got a good vibe from him. I can't remember his name. I did write it down, but of course I don't have my phone because I didn't want to be interrupted. Well, my phone's here, but it's off, so I don't want to turn it on. And it doesn't matter. The police officer I really enjoyed during this. I thought he was awesome. The case is kind of interesting. It starts off with, as you kind of watch the episode, it starts off with, the caller who is Lee Antoni, who's the husband of Amanda. He calls for the ambulance. He answered all three, like when he called 911 and they were like, do you want ambulance, police, or fire? And he said all three, which I thought was kind of an interesting. He's like, bring all three, whatever you got. He discovered his wife in the basement with significant injuries and blood kind of everywhere. So, the initial kind of police response was kind of everyone showed up. You see Lee, he's visibly upset. He's upset on the phone call as well, which he should be because, he just found his wife full of blood downstairs in the basement. It's a weird scene, because even the police officers say this. It's the most amount of blood that they've ever seen in a case. And it's like, it's weirdly like smeared, and it's like there's drips, and then it's just everywhere. Did anyone else catch the Coke cans and like the other, kind of like bottles and cans on the ground? Like, I don't know if they do this in like Canada. I gotta ask my wife if that's like a thing. Like, is the recycling in the fucking basement? I'm confused on why there's all these Coke cans. Like, was she drinking Coke while she was also, dying? Like, I'm confused on why there was so much, I don't know, just garbage. It seemed like there was garbage on the ground. I don't know. It just seemed odd. I mean, did she knock they don't like mention that, but did she knock like a garbage can over when she was down there? Cause it's just like on the floor. That was something I noticed. I mean, this guy Lee calls the police, and the one responding police officer I thought was kind of interesting. He said when the second police officer came, he was like, please stay with the with Lee, because he was like, the first police officer was like, I don't know if this guy's involved or not, so basically just stay with him. They found the piggy bank. The first thing that they see is the piggy bank, which is broken. And there's pieces of it on the ground. I mean, on the stairs going downstairs. And then, like, there's pieces embedded in her head, which means she took a pretty significant smack. The other thing that I don't get about that is, like, why... If she took we know she at least took a smack somehow. She either got hit or was hit or fell into it, whatever your kind of theory is, which I'll get into my theory at the end, as I always do. But it's like, do we know if that piggy bank was theirs? Or was it, because they said like they found it. I'm like, is it theirs though? Is it the couple's? You know, like also a weird place for a piggy bank. I thought, like, why would there be a piggy bank on that ledge, just sitting there? That's not exactly a place where you're like, let me go take my money. I'm gonna go put it on the ledge. Like, it's not really a place that you would keep a piggy bank typically. I don't know. Like, it was kind of a weird thing because they never reference whether or not that's theirs or not, which I think is obviously. I assume that it's theirs, meaning like it was belonged in the house. It's not something that came from outside the house. The only reason why I assume that is because they don't say that it wasn't. So I guess I guess I answer my own question there. It's a weird kind of thing. There is the thing that's weird is that they have pieces of the piggy bank on the stairs, but they don't have any blood really on the stairs. I didn't see any kind of drops of blood on the stairs. So, you know, I thought that kind of put a little bit of a hole in the fact that maybe she would have went into it and then fell down the stairs. I really don't know. I mean, Amanda was found with pretty significant, kind of head injuries and was in full rigor mortis, suggesting that the death occurred on Sunday, which means so they kind of had this idea that it had happened on Saturday, which, we'll obviously, get into. Some of the crime scene kind of parts of it, like there was no forced entry. The items, there's items indicating a struggle. You know what I mean? Guys, as you know, I'm reading the notes I had written down. There's a broken phone. There's a tipped over chair. That I thought that was very interesting, and that's something that I think needs to be addressed. Is how they show you the knocked over chair, where the phone is, where the knocked over chair is, and then where the staircase is. It's all very interesting because if you look, it could easily be like a little circle. Like she drops the phone, tries to run away, and then falls down the stairs or gets pushed down the stairs. I think it was a pretty easy kind of thing to follow with that. I don't know. It's such a weird kind of case. I mean, Amanda's body supposedly, according to them, had showed significant injuries. It had bruising. There was blood obviously everywhere. You could tell as you're watching the episode, you're like, man, this is a lot of blood. Like, it almost looked like someone slaughtered a pig down there. Like that's how much it looks like a slaughterhouse. Like it looks like that type of, kind of spillage kind of everywhere. There's shit on the walls. It's like, what? Amanda's pants were pulled down, which is another, that is definitely suggesting some sort of sexual assault of some sort. But her pants are pulled down, but her underwear's on. Like, there's so many unanswered kind of questions throughout this episode where you're like, well, why was that like that? Why is this like that? It's just one of those episodes that becomes, infuriating the longer you watch it, and especially on a rewatch. You're like, my God, this is so strange. The initial kind of family reaction from, her family is that family members had received calls from Lee and they were informed of kind of Amanda's death. He had, called, I think the police called, some of the family members as well. Amanda's one brother did kind of say some concerns about Lee's sort of impulsiveness and sort of, I guess, strained part of their relationship. I think he had some questions about whether or not they were kind of a good kind of match. It seemed like they were a good match. It seemed like they love each other, but they seemed like they kind of fought a lot. Lee didn't seem like a guy who worked. I'm not going to lie. The initial judging a book by its cover, I didn't trust him. I thought something was strange. I'll get into that but we can get into it, I guess, right now. He didn't really have a job. Amanda kind of had her own kind of business of kind of house cleaning and all that stuff. The primary suspect from Jump Street was Lee. And he says that in the episode, which I thought was kind of funny. He was just like, well, I understand that it's always the spouse. I wanted to be like, he said it was always the spouse that they look at first. And I'm like, yeah, because 100% of the time, it's usually the spouse. Like almost 100% of the time, it's like, I always like guys who get on TV and they're like, oh, someone help me, find my wife. It's like, dude, they're going to arrest you. They will be arresting you very shortly. It's like these cases where it's like, anytime it's a wife, I'm always like, it's probably the husband. You never really see a husband go, missing or anything like that. Or it's rare. It does happen, but it's definitely rare. It's weird. It's just, it's like, of course you have to look at the husband because you have to look at what was going on. They don't seem to think it was him. I mean, he does seem genuinely upset. I hate to point a finger and judge a book by its cover, but he definitely seems like a guy he seemed like somebody I wouldn't trust if I met him. I don't know why. I do trust his reactions, though. I did judge him at first, but looks-wise, and then I sort of let go of it as I saw him react and talk about what he saw. Unless he's a complete sociopath, then you have me fooled. But he doesn't seem like a guy who is like that. He seems, he looks like a guy like that, but he doesn't seem like one in the reaction to how she died, how he talks about it, how upset he is. Like, he seems pretty sincere with all of that. So my initial reaction was, it's him. That was my initial, like, he knows more. There's something else to this story. But then as the episode sort of goes on, I sort of see, all right, maybe he didn't, kind of do anything. But I will say this. I do think in this episode, and you're going to have to follow me on this one, I do think whatever your personal way of looking at life is going to kind of sway you in your decision on this case. Because the next part of this is something I don't understand at all. Being, married, Lee leaves to go to Saskatchewan on Friday, which, by the way, Saskatchewan, what a fun word. I wish the United States had a word like that to say. Where are you going? Saskatchewan or Saskatchewan. It's just a fun word to say. So he's going to Saskatchewan on Friday, okay? And he leaves on Friday. And yes, investigators go. They follow him. They follow his path. They got him on camera at gas stations, literally stopping, getting gas, getting food, getting candy, stopping at all those kind of rest stops, those shitty rest stops where you grab a protein bar and a club soda and you move on. He's going up there to see his mother and handle some stuff with his father, who had passed away a year earlier. A few people I had seen kind of respond and talk about this online. They had said, well, that's weird. It's a year later. And I'm like, nah, it's not. Sometimes you just don't get to it. Sometimes you're, it's harder to, when someone passes away, it's hard to kind of, especially a father or mother or something like that, if you've ever been through it. My father passed away. We didn't have everything wrapped up immediately. Sometimes it does take a year. Sometimes things just, you don't get around to it, and then you forget about it, and then like, oh yeah, we still got to do that. So I wasn't weirded out by that. Some people were. I was not weirded out by that whatsoever. I do think it's weird, though. Well, let me get into this. So the last communication Amanda had with Lee was Saturday around 7 p.m. And supposedly the conversation ends sort of abruptly. He's on the phone with her. The dog barks. Amanda tells the dog to be quiet, and then the dog yelps, and then the phone goes out, which is all very significant. This is why I say whatever your personal way of looking at life is going to come into play in this case. That's what I think, okay? Because I'm married, okay? And if I was on the phone with my wife, okay, and that sort of situation took place where the dog, I'm not home, she's home, the dog barks, and then the phone goes out, I wouldn't stop texting her or calling her and somehow getting a hold of her. Even if the cell phone is the only way we can communicate, like, I would send her a message on Instagram. I'd be like, hey, like, what, you know what I mean? Like, is everything okay? Like, what happened there? Like, I would continue to follow up. I wouldn't just, even if she was mad at me about something I was saying, and that's why she hung the phone up, I'd be like, hey, are you okay? Because I heard the dog bark in the background. Like, I would wait for her to give me a response before I kind of settled down. Even if you wouldn't do that, right? Even if you're like, well, I'll let her kind of, a couple hours would maybe go by, and then I would send her a message or somehow get a hold of her. I'd call her. I would somehow figure out a way to get a hold of her. Lee kind of doesn't do that, which is weird to me being married, because I'm like, well, why wouldn't you try to get a hold of her, especially when you know the dog is barking? Like, it seemed strange. She's a woman, she's home alone. It's like, of course, your brain doesn't go to the worst case scenario. Of course your brain doesn't do that. But it's like, I still think it was odd. It was odd that he does. Now, here's why I'm saying that, because I would never allow that to happen. And that's why I think that is sort of shaping the way I feel about the case. You know what I mean? Just because I wouldn't do it doesn't necessarily mean that someone else wouldn't do it. But I do think it's weird that we kind of don't have, I think as a married couple, if you're in a relationship, it's like, I talk to my wife all the time. You know what I mean? I know where she is at all times. She's 3 hours behind, actually in Canada right now, not in Calgary, but she's in Canada back home with her family. She's 3 hours behind me. Like, I know where she is. She knows where I'm at. Like, we sort of keep updates on each other even though we're not together. So I think it was weird that he didn't sort of follow up with her after 7 p.m. on Saturday. Also, earlier in the episode, the police officer says, like, they never really spent a lot of time without each other. And he said, what is the statistical probability of something like this happening when they never really spent time? It is strange. We start going, okay, well, what is that statistical probability? It's probably very low that this happens the one time that they're not together. Like, it doesn't, this is a hard case, man. This is a tough thing because there's so many weird things within what happened or what it looked like in that basement. So the last communication, like I said, is on Friday. That situation happens. The phone goes dead. He doesn't talk to her. Okay, so the next day, he said that he shoots her a message, but he doesn't hear from her, and then he's like going to bed. He's like, I'll just get up early and show up on Monday. And it's like, no. I wouldn't go a day without talking to my wife. You know what I mean? That's why I mean, like, it's shaping the way I feel about it, because I'm like, well, that's weird, because I wouldn't go a day without talking to my wife. But has he gone days where he hasn't talked to her? Just because they haven't I assume if you tell me that you haven't spent a night without her, then you haven't gone a day without talking. So if you haven't gone a day without talking, why did you let this day go without talking? It's just sort of out of character if that's what you're telling me. You're telling me you guys never spent any time together. Now all of a sudden you spend time together and you're not talking. It's like, well, I'm confused. Which one is it? You know what I mean? Because it's like there are times where my wife and I have spent time apart, but we always are in communication. So what is it with you? Like all of a sudden this time, the fucking week, the weekend that she ends up dying is the time that you decide that you're not going to call her. Like it just doesn't add up to me. There's no activity on her phone after 7 p.m. on Saturday. There's nothing, no text messages, phone calls, or anything like that. There were concerns, I guess, of kind of violent offenders in Northeast Calgary. I guess they said that area of Canada has some, a few of the people who live in the neighborhood say that there's, some shootings and, kind of crime and things of that nature. Typically a dog scares away that type of person. If someone's trying to break into the house, typically a dog scares them off because the dog barks and then they run away because the dog's going to attack typically if they walk in someone who isn't supposed to be there. I mean, that's kind of the whole point of having a dog. I don't know, man. This is like they really relied, from what I understand, and they definitely tell you this in the episode. They kind of relied on kind of the forensic scene of the evidence. You know what I mean? The fingerprints, the footprints, the DNA. They were really relying on that. And when the forensic kind of findings kind of come back, there's no fingerprints were found. 12 impressions were made in the blood, most made by a foot, which turned out to be her foot. There's 2 foot impressions facing up the stairs, but no shoe impressions. So, she has her feet at the bottom of the staircase, but she doesn't have her shoes on, and she's bleeding clearly because her foot is in the blood. There's swipe marks in the blood suggesting that maybe the offender had been trying to cover up kind of footwear or trying to make, that's what the idea was, that there was someone who was involved in this that did this to her, and then they were trying to cover it up. Amanda had no basically defensive wounds, but was covered in bruises. This is the part about the covering and bruises that I didn't understand. It's like, well, where were the bruises? Are they on her knees, on her elbows, and like her hands? Because that means maybe she fell. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't. If she's got bruises on like her legs and her her face and as if she had been in a fight or something like that makes more sense to me. Then I'm like, oh, then she was probably in a fight. But like they don't really tell you where the bruises are. Which is kind of frustrating because I'm like, well, that's kind of important. I think that, that you kind of have to know about. Like, yeah, I have to know where the bruising is for me to be like, well, I think it was a fight then. You know what I mean? Because if you got bruising on your hands or cuts on your hands, like your knuckles, and you got bruises in your arms and your neck or like your chest area, like, well, you were probably in a fight then. Because that's where I got bruised when I got into, fights as a kid. or some sort of altercation. And I'm like, okay, so that's what you would have. You would have bruising there. But I go, if you're bruising on like your knees or your shins, that's more of like an idea that maybe somebody had fallen and they were bracing themselves as they fell. Does that make sense? That's what I was thinking. And I'm like, well, where are the bruises? I kept being like, where are the goddamn bruises? So one of the interesting things I thought was that when Lee gets home, when he actually finds her, he says he opens the door. He says this. And I don't know if anyone else caught this. I don't want to assume that it's him. Because when you get to my theory on what I actually think happened, you're going to go, well, I can't believe that's your theory. But it's like, he says, I knew the dog had to go outside. Here's what's interesting to me. Again, this is why I say your feelings are sort of going to kind of dictate what gone on. In this case, how do you know the dog has to go out, right? Because like if I got home from a long weekend, I had not talked to my wife, I would assume that the dog had been taken care of. The dog had been outside. The dog had been fed. The dog had had its water. You get home and you're like, well, I know the dog had to go out. Now, it is possible that you could say, well, I just know my dog, and my dog has to, I know when I get home, the dog, wants to go outside. Maybe, but I would assume that you would think that the dog was taken care of. I would play with my dog, hey, what's up, man? I wouldn't assume that he had to go out because I would assume that my wife took care of him while I was away. That was the only thing that didn't make sense to me in the one line that he said. I was sort of like, why would you say that there? Now, again, there's going to be 20 people who are going to write me, just like they did in the last episode about the Jack the Ripper when I got something wrong. It's like, sure, it's possible that he just knows the dog that well. Sure, absolutely possible. But I just thought it was weird that he said it. I was like, well, that's kind of not a thing. Like, I don't know. It's sort of like not a like I wouldn't think that. You know what I mean? That's where my brain is going. I'm like, well, this is why I'm sort of thinking it is you, because you keep kind of saying things and I'm like, well, I wouldn't do that, but maybe you would. I don't know. Maybe you know that your dog just has to go out. I don't know. I have no idea. But I wouldn't know that. I would assume my wife took care of the dog when I got home. That's what I would think. Or again, maybe you're the type of dog owner that comes home and the dog always goes out every time you get home, no matter what, because it's too excited and pisses on the floor. I don't know. But it's like it wasn't clarified, so that's why it makes me question it. There were some neighbors who said that they heard the dog bark and yell from Amanda's house at the time of the incident or around the time of the incident, which is significant because it's like, okay, so then there was clearly something went on. And I remember in the episode they said like, oh, it sounded like a get out of here type bark. Well, to me, that sounds like that could be a get out of here type bark, or it could be a somebody's in distress type bark, because they're typically the same thing from a dog. A dog's yelp when someone's inside the house and a dog yelp when something happens that's bad. They're pretty close. They're not exactly the same, and I'm not saying they're the same, but they're pretty close usually. So it's like maybe she had fallen down the stairs, and then the dog, kind of went barking like crazy, and then it stopped. So, and they said that they saw someone running through a yard. I don't know, man. Like maybe, again, I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just saying that I don't know. I don't know, because it's like it's hard to say that we don't know that the person was running from that yard. That person could have just been running by. You know what I mean? Who knows? It could have been a runner. They were training for a marathon. You have no idea. So it's like we're just kind of connecting because we were trying to make a story on exactly what kind of took place. They had a lot of theories on what happened. They had a lot of theories. The first theory that they had was that there was basically a potential affair. They investigated the possibility of Amanda having an affair. They found absolutely no evidence. They thought maybe, because Lee noticed that she was wearing fancier underwear. I guess, or the laundry wasn't done that day. She had migraines, you know what I mean? I know when I'm not feeling well, the fucking laundry is the last thing I want to do. So it's like, that's not that crazy to me that the laundry, she was wearing nicer underwear. It's like, well, yeah, the laundry wasn't done. There's your answer. You know what I mean? As someone who has to do his own laundry, I wish I didn't have to. I wish I was rich enough where I could pay someone, because I absolutely hate folding. I fucking hate folding. But it's a different podcast for that. It's like, dude, yeah, maybe she was just like, I'm not doing that. I'll do that, on another day. So she just put on whatever underwear was clean at that point, which we have every one of us has absolutely been guilty of that at some point. I've walked around my house in a tuxedo shirt because I was like, I don't feel like doing the laundry. Like, that's where I'm at when it comes to laundry. So it's like, that to me wasn't that wild. Lee's sister was a suspect. Lee had basically called services, social services on his sister because I guess his sister was a little bit, was an addict of some kind. And then the sister had found that out and then made threats towards Amanda and Lee, and there was a lot of animosity over that. She would call 20 times a day, and she would be like, where the fuck is my kids and shit. I mean, that's something that absolutely has to be looked at. Anytime someone makes a threat and then someone turns up dead. And it seems like these police officers absolutely investigated it, and they came back that it was, nothing. So, it's kind of like a dead end. Then they drop this one, and this is where I'm headed with my theory. They drop the accident theory. Now, hear me out. I did not think this was an accident when I first watched it. I went, this is bullshit. This guy Lee knows more. The sister knows more. After the second watch, I started to think, and I'm like, it's possible that this was an absolute accident. And because the behavioral science investigators are the ones who were like, it's possible that this is kind of coherent with an accident falling. There's some things that are definitely not answered, but it falls in that kind of category. There was a possibility that Amanda tripped over the dog and then fell down the stairs, hitting the piggy bank, rolling down the stairs, and then dying down there. Biomechanics engineer found Amanda's injuries consistent with those accidental falls, and then there was a ton of skepticism about this theory because there's so many undisturbed items at the scene and the placement of Amanda's phone. Now, like I said earlier, the way that the phone is and the way that the chair is knocked over and the way that the stairs are, it literally is a circle. So it's like it is possible that, that somebody, this is the original theory that I had was this. You ready? Somebody did try to get into the house. It scared her. She drops the phone, runs around, knocks over the chair, either trips and hits the piggy bank and rolls down the stairs and then is bleeding and afraid to come up the stairs because the person scared her was up there, or she didn't know if the person had left or not, right? That is actually my theory. I think someone was trying to get into the place. It scared her, dropped the phone. The dog went crazy. She ran away, and she was like, well, I got to get out of here. Ran, tripped, hit the piggy bank, rolled down the stairs, and then got completely disoriented while she was down there because she was losing blood. Now, here's why I come to that theory. I recently, about 6 months ago, gave blood, and I did a service where someone comes to my house and takes your blood at your house, okay? I am very queasy around needles. I'm very queasy around blood. This was a hard episode for me to watch. I don't like any of it. But I watched, I gave blood because I wanted to get my blood tested for, various different reasons, just kind of health-wise. So they come to your house and they take your blood. They take your blood. It's a weird kind of, it's not weird. I don't know if anyone else has ever done this, but it's a company. I'm not affiliated with the company. It's a company called Blokes. It's for Men's Health, and they come and, they test your blood. And they take it literally right in the kitchen. So I take the blood. The girl takes the blood from me. And then after we're done, I go to stand up, okay? And I start getting very lightheaded. I mean incredibly lightheaded, okay? And I tell the woman, I go, I'm getting lightheaded. And then she goes, do you want some water? And then I go, oh, yeah. And I go to get up to tell her where the cups are in my kitchen. And as I go to get up and point, I ended up passing out, okay? And the woman ended up catching me, but I still fell into the stove and ended up on the ground. And I sort of woke up with this woman standing over me and my wife, who was in the bedroom. She wasn't out helping because it was very early in the morning. She wasn't asleep, but she was awake with my dog because my dog has to be hidden when someone comes into my apartment because he's very territorial. So I said, just go into the room and we'll just do this. But she had heard the crash, my wife, and she came out, and I woke up with my wife standing over me with this woman who had just taken my blood. And they kept being like, do you need, want to go to the ambulance? And I kept saying no. Now, that situation ended up happening for various different medical reasons. It turns out it happens in my family. I didn't know. Thanks a lot, Mom, for telling me that one. I had to be, 36 for you to tell me it. The reason why I bring that story up is that I woke up not knowing what the fuck happened, right? I didn't even hit my head, and I still had no idea what happened. If Amanda got scared, hit her head in any which way, while she was also fighting a migraine. People forget that. I go, she had a migraine and then hit her head. Okay. Okay. And I've never experienced the migraine, but I know people that have had it, and it is devastating to some people. They can't even get out of bed. So imagine you have a migraine. Okay. Now imagine you whack your head, you fall down a flight of stairs, you're cut because you're scared and you're afraid to go upstairs, right? I think I was disoriented when I passed out and woke up, and I didn't even hit my head. And I was disoriented for a period of time. Now imagine you're disoriented, bleeding, okay? And I think what the police officer said in the early part of the episode, is it possible she hit her head and lost all rational thought? Yes, it is. It is absolutely possible. And I didn't think that that was possible when I originally watched the first time I watched it. But now the second time watching, I'm like, it's absolutely possible. She absolutely could have hit her head, been totally shunned, like just totally stunned and disoriented. And then while she was obviously cut and losing blood, right? And then she eventually passed out and then was waking up and passing out, waking up and passing out. That's what I think took place there. It doesn't answer all the questions that are in this case, doesn't answer the question of the bruising, doesn't really answer the question of, why the phone was so far away. I mean, is it possible she dropped it, like I said, ran around the thing? Like, it doesn't fully answer a lot of what went on. It doesn't fully answer a lot of what went on downstairs, But maybe she's waking up and passing out, waking up and passing out. I only passed out once, and I was disoriented for like 15 minutes. I was kind of like, where the fuck am I? Why is my wife telling me to drink orange juice? Like, I was out of it, and I didn't hit my head, and I wasn't bleeding. So now I honestly believe that is, that's my theory on what took place with her. Otherwise, I really don't know. It's such an impossible case. Like, they have the kind of unanswered questions in this case are the DNA was all attributed to Amanda. So there was nobody downstairs. There's no spit things. There's no spit. There's no hair. There's nothing. All the passive drips were all Amanda. So that means she's standing up and dripping, because maybe she's standing up, dripping, and passing out again, and she keeps kind of passing out. She doesn't know, you know what I mean? There's no evidence of any contact with absolutely anybody besides her, which rules out the original sexual assault kind of part. The pet behavior is definitely a weird one. Like, if someone did come in the place, I would think the dog would come down. Like, I'm recording in my second bedroom. My door is shut. My dog is not in here. But if I were to open my door and show you right now, my dog is sitting right outside the door. You know what I mean? Like, he's sitting right there. He knows he wants to be in here with me. So it's like, it is weird that the dog did not come downstairs. It is weird the cat did not come downstairs. Especially fucking cats. Cats are weird. Cats kind of lurk. You know what I mean? Like, what's going on down there? Dogs are a little bit more like, where is everyone? I want to play. But cats are like, what's up? What's up with you? Like, so I thought it was weird that the cat didn't go down. Even weirder, the dog didn't go down, being that it, was her dog. Was it possible someone was upstairs and didn't prevented the dog from going out? No, because there's no evidence upstairs of anyone, even breaking in. And again, that's the problem with the theory that someone opened the door. I think someone might have opened the door and that's the thing that scared her. And then I think maybe someone opened the door, the dog barked and yelped, and then the person ran away, didn't go in, and it scared her enough to run down the stairs, and then the situation happened. The footprint impressions are another thing that don't really answer. She's standing at the base of the stairs. Like, why wouldn't she just walk up the stairs? But are you that disoriented where you can't walk up the stairs? I was for 15 minutes when I was passed out in my kitchen. So it is possible that you were that disoriented. And they're not really sure why she didn't go up the stairs at any point, despite they believe being capable of kind of, getting up the stairs. I don't know, man. This is a weird case. I have not read a bunch of things online. I saw some things about Amanda online that basically, she was a dog person, and, there was somebody posting, I think it was on Twitter or might have been on Reddit or something, where someone was kind of posting about, how she was a good person and really good with animals and all that sort of stuff. So, I mean, it's a really horrible case, and I do hope that they get to the bottom of something. But it certainly looks to me, after a second watch, I believe that it was most likely an accident. Unless some other evidence, kind of like they say, kind of comes forward. It's sort of, what else do you say about it? Just an absolutely terrible case. just for the family and, because again, so many unanswered questions. And like I said, even with my theory, I don't know that it answers the bruising. She could have hit her head, but I'm like, why does she have so many bruises? She fell down you have that much bruising and you only fell down a couple stairs. Is it possible? I guess. I'm not sure, So again, let me know what you guys think. Shoot me messages on Instagram and let me know what you guys think about this, case. I had a lot of. This is one of those cases where at the end you have more questions than you do answers, and you're just like, all right, well, this is my theory. I hope you guys liked it. I hope you guys enjoyed, the podcast here on it. I can't wait to do the next episode. For you guys as well. And the fourth episode I'm excited for as well, The Mothman. Everyone remembers that episode from the original series. Anyway, thank you guys so much for listening. Follow me on Instagram at I am Bryan McKenna. Send me any messages or any theories you want to disagree with. Tell me anything I missed. Tell me how this sounds as well, because this should sound a little bit better. I got a different microphone pop. And also, if you guys ever want to come to a comedy show, check that out as well. All my dates are on my Instagram usually. And that's it. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I will see you guys next week.